Losing recruits to out-of-state programs at a record pace, and it might be a smart thing.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Portal Podcast, and you can get your recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal scoop right here every day. I am Brian Smith, longtime recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast your first listen. We're going to be going over the state of Alabama today. It used to be the hardest state, arguably, in the country to get players out of. It's not that way anymore. And if you're surprised by that, so am I. But to be honest, it may not be a bad thing for Auburn or for Alabama. Why? Well, sometimes you have to make business decisions. We're going to dive into that throughout the pod. But if you take nothing else from this podcast, note the following. You can't be paying a whole bunch of players to stand on the sideline. They have to be contributing, even if it's a freshman. There's too much money involved in football now. You can't just have guys waving flags and waving, doing hand signals if they're a backup quarter. You have to make business decisions. And right now, the state of Alabama is pretty much open for business for kids to leave. Ohio State, Oregon, and numerous other programs from around the country have finally kind of broken through in Alabama. I'm going to break it down as we go through. But again, business may be booming, but it's not always a great decision for Alabama or Auburn to make those business decisions where money comes out of their pocket. So here are the questions that I have to start off the show today. Points. Here's the 24/7 rankings, and I'll ask questions as we go along. This is the top 5 guys for the state of Alabama for this year. Gunnar Rivers, yes, Philip Rivers' son. He's at St. Michael Catholic over in the Mobile area. He's committed to North Carolina State, same school his dad went to. That wasn't going to happen for either of the in-state schools. But to that end, Isaac McNeil from Viger, he's another kid from down in that area. They would both like to keep him in state. They both have a visit. Maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't, but they're battling LSU, who's got a visit, Georgia, who's got a visit, Florida, who's got a visit, and then both Auburn and Bama have official visits lined up with Isaac McNeil. Viger's a really good program. It's a tradition-rich program that both Auburn and Alabama hit hard, so that's something to think about. Jabarrius Garror, we call him Chicken. He's at Viger as well. He's a defensive end. He was Defensive Player of the Year in the state as a sophomore, and I believe as a junior as well. Miami and Texas A&M kind of lead. I don't know what the date is for Miami to get the visit, but A&M, that's a really unique situation because they kind of led the way with the NIL with this young man. He decommitted from Bama, who didn't make near as big an offer. I don't think Bama's really that involved now. I could be wrong, but I don't believe that's really an option. Auburn has a visit on May 29th, Texas June 12th, Florida State June 19th. And again, the Aggies June 5th. Miami's got to probably figure into that at some point. But this is another case where Alabama's kind of punting, if you will, on going after an in-state kid. It's NIL related. Jatori Williams, offensive lineman out of Phoenix City Central. He's absolutely a dude. Georgia, Miami, Florida State, and Kentucky are his official visits. At one point, he was committed to the Alabama Crimson Tide. No longer. They're not on the list. I'm not sure if Auburn's still involved. I assume they are. But again, this is probably more of a business decision. Jalen Scott, safety out of Williamson down in Mobile. Another kid, I know him well, played with Coastline Stars. Very athletic kid, downhill linebacker, fits Brent Venables' scheme well. They gained a commitment from him after they really went after him. He could have went to other schools, but Oklahoma wanted him more. And again, that could be a business decision. Kind of going on. Number 6 is A. King Hall, kid out of Dothan, Alabama. He really blew up over the last year. He took the Oregon opportunity. He could have stayed closer to home. He had all the offers down south, Alabama and Auburn and Georgia and everybody else. He's leaving the state as well. He's absolutely rocked up. He's the kind of big corner that could probably play early, but Oregon is willing to spend more money than most. It's a kind of a different deal with the amount of money they have. To that end, we'll see if he sticks with that. A kid from South Alabama going to Oregon, that's wild within itself. Donovan Moore, kid from Bessemer City, just outside of Birmingham. He's committed to Auburn. He really likes Auburn. I think he's happy with it. I don't think he's going to flip. That's the one in-state commitment that is between these two schools. And I'm like, okay, I get it. He's very happy about it. I think that'll stick. Cameron Pritchard, another kid committed to Oregon. He's out of Thompson, the most tradition-rich program right now in the state of Alabama. It's in the Birmingham area. And to be really honest with you, that came early. I don't know how much Oregon offered. Maybe the kid just wanted to go there, but that's another kid that I'm sure Alabama and Auburn would like, but I don't hear his name come up very much. Jaden Aparicio-Bailey, a safety out of Prattville, which is basically a suburb over there in the Montgomery area. May 29th, he's got Clemson. June 5th, it's Georgia. Southern Cal, he took an unofficial visit to in March. I'm sure he's got a couple other visits that probably aren't public yet. But I don't see Auburn. I don't see Alabama. This is a young man that I know Georgia really likes. Like, he may be their top guy at safety. I'm not sure Georgia will pay a ton up front either, and we know Clemson really doesn't. So this one's the most perplexing. I don't know if he just hasn't filled out his list yet, but Aparicio-Bailey is a stud. I love his upside. I think he could even play some corner in a cover 3 scheme. He's very, very gifted. Deshaun Hall, another kid that I know well. He's also at Prattville. He's a big-time basketball player as well as being a 6'5 receiver. Clemson, May 29th. Bama, June 5th. Tennessee, June 19th. Auburn's involved. I know he's visited there multiple times. He's probably not going to play both sports in college, but Auburn made an offer to him to do so. So did Tennessee. That'll be an interesting recruitment, but there are more pieces to the pie there because of the basketball side of it. But I just wanted to go over kind of the top 10 kids. You don't see Alabama and Auburn with all these commitments. Is that surprising to you? Should it be surprising to you? Anymore, it's not to me. Oregon has signed arguably the best player in the state the last 2 years. Tank Jones, this past season, another kid out of Mobile, out of St. Paul's, I believe that's the school he played at. It's still the same point. Certain players, you'll go a little more with NIL compared to others, and that's fine. But there's a limit. I think you're going to see more and more of the following. I was actually texting with somebody about this, and we were steadfast in agreement. There are a handful of kids that you will pay a bunch to, and then the drop-off is precipitous. A stud defensive end that's going to play right away. The key here for all these kids will play right away. They're not going to pay kids to stand. This situation in Alabama is honestly starting to grow across the country. They will pay players that are playing. You'll see other kids that come in that they paid a lot and they thought were going to play. They'll get cut, basically. This is any school. This isn't an Alabama-Auburn thing. And you will also see kids that come in that maybe they didn't think were going to play. They'll earn the NIL, basically take that away from somebody else, and then they will be ascended up the ranks in terms of money because they've earned it. And that comes to the last point here. Evaluations are always the most important thing with recruiting. You got to recruit the right guys for your program. Auburn and Alabama have to make their fits for their schemes, and they also have to look at it from their budgets. You've got to find guys that are long-term plays that aren't going to freak out because they didn't get $400,000 or $500,000 out of high school. They're not going to freak out because they weren't the priority recruit. Some guys have to kind of take that role. And again, it doesn't mean you won't go out there and hammer it and just be a dude your freshman year. They'll compensate you. But that's why so many kids are leaving the state of Alabama, like Louisiana, like Ohio. Those 3 states traditionally are the hardest to me. Ohio, Louisiana, and Alabama. Why? Well, that's Ohio State, LSU, and Alabama/Auburn. Those schools, it means a lot. And even though there are a lot of prospects in those states, the elite kids in particular, they don't leave very often. NIL has changed that. So when we come back, I'm going to dive into some questions. I've got several for you, and I want to answer some along the way. But if you have questions for me in any way, shape, or form, whether it's today or another day, please put them in the chat, or if you want to comment on them later on, I'll try to get to them on YouTube. After I post this, it goes up at 4 o'clock same day on YouTube each time I do one of these live shows. Fire away. So when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about how smart is it to use this approach to not necessarily pay, because there could be some consequences. And I absolutely admit that. That is next, right here on the Portal Podcast. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Indeed. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you are looking for. skills, experience, location, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute that I'll be speaking with you, company like yours made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching and more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes for less stress, less time, and more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Make sure you check out the Everydayer Club down below. In the link, in the description, there is a link. It'll explain, but you can get your pods on the go with no ads. Check out the Everydayer Club. All right. Basic here. NIL has changed the state of Alabama. It's changed Ohio. It's changed Florida. It's changed all the states. But it is a little bit more surprising with a state like Alabama that kids just don't normally leave. We're seeing a lot more of a propensity to do so. And I think pretty much Alabama and Auburn are kind of doing the same thing here. Georgia does this, Notre Dame, etc. Strategically, you'll offer certain amounts of kids bigger money because they can make an impact. There might be a few exceptions to that, maybe an offensive tackle that's going to need a year or two, but he's the guy for you. Okay, there are a few exceptions. Positions matter. But overall, the majority of recruits aren't going to get those big upfront NIL deals anymore. That's the way it's going to be. It'll be spread out more, and you're going to have to earn it. And if you get paid your first year, you better produce your first year. You won't be back year two. That's going to be the game. And this is not an Alabama-Auburn thing. This is across the country. GMs are looking at this more from a strategic point of view. And to that, let's jump into a few questions and comments that I have for everybody here. All right. Number one, your take on paying big upfront money for top recruits who will not likely play early. For me, it's pretty simple. Unless it's an offensive tackle, a defensive end, or defensive tackle, especially if you're a school that's struggling at that spot, supply and demand. I don't see it. You can go in the portal and maybe get somebody that's a similar level player, but it's been in college for a year or two, that you have proof of concept that they've handled off the field, academically, socially. They fit into their locker room, whatever, but they decided to leave that program. Maybe they didn't have an opportunity, and you've got a better one for them to play. That's the route that I think most are going to take. Not saying everybody, but I think most will. Let's use Auburn for an example. Look at the quarterbacks they have. Tia and the other two young guys they've got. None of those kids were like super highly rated. But Auburn's offense is pretty simplistic. They know what they want. They look for the fit. Yeah, they spent on the quarterback to come over. I get it from USF. He was, 3,000-yard passer, 1,100-yard rusher, all of that. But that's for 1 year. The next guy's going to have to earn it. And I think that's the pattern that most schools are going to go with. It's not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just that I think a lot of people are surprised. The money's gone up too much. The schools are only going to spend so much no matter what it is per player. There's just going to be some people that just aren't going to get it. So I think that's probably pretty smart. Number two, does the high school a recruit comes from matter as it relates to NIL, meaning the relationships with that coach, the relationships in that program, that community? What do you think? And the answer is yes. Fair or not, there are certain programs, if it's 50-50 on which kid's getting a bigger offer, the school that a kid comes from, I think absolutely matters. Coaches don't want to admit that, but it's true. When you do not have a good relationship at certain programs, quote unquote, in state, whether it's in Louisiana, California, Utah, New Jersey, whatever, and you're the local school, you're in trouble. You're in trouble. Everybody has to find a way to play that middle ground, and it is super political. It's not avoidable. Every coach has to deal with it. There may be a player that you want more that's out of state, or maybe it's some random school that has a great player once every 50 years. You can take that guy. But if you don't take the kid that wants to go to your school, who's from the traditional power, a Thompson, a Saraland, a Phoenix City Central, a St. Paul's, whatever it may be, schools that constantly produce players, there's a risk. So yes, location and politics with the recruiting, they absolutely blend together, and quite frankly, quite often. Number 3, should Bama or Auburn try to keep specific schools out of Alabama? So what I'm saying by this question, Oregon's made inroads. I can use that as the prime example here. If they come in and try to get a kid, should you outbid them? Maybe. But if they're offering like $500,000 or $1 million more a year, there's some discrepancy. But overall, are you trying to keep certain schools out so they don't get a trend? I think that is one that is almost impossible to answer with just yes or no, because again, it comes down to position, the high school, it's all the politics of this. But Oregon's been doing it this year. They did it last year. They did it the year before. They're getting kids out of Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Maryland, Pennsylvania. They've gotten kids from all over the country. They're kind of a rare brand. And part of it is NIL. And I don't think they pay as much as Tech does necessarily, Texas Tech. But Oregon's right there. They're a school that is going to be in your backyard if they want to be. And Dan Lanning was at Alabama at one point. Then he was with Kirby at Georgia. So he's familiar with these areas anyway. He probably has a lot of contacts from his staff as well as himself on his Rolodex that, you know what, it's going to be hard to do. But it wouldn't surprise me if they do get a King Hall, if they end up probably trying to push them out next year. Like that'd be 3 years in a row, a top kid's gone all the way to Oregon from the state of Alabama. I could see that being a little bit different. Number 2 set of questions here. Number 4, could Bama or Auburn win big with 40% or less of its roster from inside the state of Alabama borders? Yes, but I think there's 2 parts to this. It's a little easier for Alabama. It's the more tradition-rich program. And Saban even did that to a certain degree towards the end of his tenure when he was just plucking 5 stars from all over. If you're just recruiting at that level, it doesn't matter. But DeBoer, I don't think, can do that because he doesn't have the same cachet. He doesn't have any rings. So it's somewhere in between. With Auburn and Golish, he's recruited in the South a long time. He was at UCF. He was at Tennessee. Then he was at USF. He knows the Tennessee to South Florida corridor from I-75 and all that. He's going to recruit Florida, Alabama, Georgia, and Tennessee. That's going to be a big part of his base. Locally, he probably wants to win, but that's not saying they won't recruit nationally because they're in on kids at Mater Dei out in LA. They're recruiting a few kids from Texas. Will Menzel, the quarterback, that's a young man that he's from Phoenix area. They've recruited forever. There are a lot of different storylines here. Auburn's a little different than Bama. They'll probably stay more local. And I also think they'll take a few more flyers on kids they don't pay as much, redshirt them and try to develop them, win with juniors, seniors, and fifth-year seniors. That's something that never really goes out of style either. Not that I blame anybody for doing that in general. Are there positions where recruiting inside Alabama matter more? Yes. It's very simple. I got a call from a buddy of mine who's been in the recruiting game for a long time in this area. And he said, you can go get your skill guys wherever you want. He says, but if you're going to play in the SEC, you need to get the linemen from down here. I don't disagree. They're a little bit different in terms of their mentality. There's so many of them, it doesn't make sense to go very far for them. You know, if you get an elite left tackle like Jackson Lloyd, there's a kid for Bama, that's fine. But by and large, recruit the high schools in Alabama, Louisiana, Georgia, down through this area. They're right here for you, specifically in your backyard. I think that Auburn and Alabama are both trying to do that. But then you get into that political game once again. When a kid gets an offer from like A&M that's way higher, or Oregon that's way higher, or Miami that's way higher, you got to make a business decision that also gets political. If he's at one of those programs that you want to win at, that gets touchy. And every single situation can be a little bit different. Number 6, are recent on-field performances hurting Bama and Auburn with local recruits? I don't think as much as some might believe. I mean, Auburn hasn't had a great season since 2017. That's just reality. They've had some good teams, but nothing special. And they've been under 500 multiple times. Alabama just made it to the playoff, although it's debatable if they should have been in, and they didn't do much with it. They didn't have a run game last year. They had 104 yards per game. There are a lot of things that made Alabama fans mad, and all the recruits and stuff see it. But it's still Alabama. And it's still Auburn in state specifically. The pull in this state, I can tell you from living in Alabama, is a little bit different. Those two schools still have a very big interest in keeping kids home. It comes down to the NIL and a few kids. This is the last part. I'm just going to throw it in now. With our society, and especially because of these right here, having access to the world is a lot easier. I think more kids are okay with leaving, even if the money's close. Like Auburn or Alabama may offer more in some circumstances, and a kid still may bolt. That's just part of life. 25 years ago, that was not going to happen. Alabama or Auburn could have been awful. If the kid grew up an Alabama or Auburn fan, that's where they were going. As long as they, ardently recruited them and showed respect to the family and the head coach at that school, it was going to be really hard for that not to be the final destination. It was either Alabama or Auburn. That was it. That's over with. Even with Saban towards the end, they'd lose some kids in Alabama or Florida or Georgia that may have grown up fans. NIL had started, and a lot of kids started looking at things, and it wasn't just a, behind the scenes bag that they were getting paid. They wanted to know they were respected in that regard. So it became a much different kind of deal. So when we come back, I will jump into the chat. We'll get started with part 2 of the show. That is next, right here on Locked on the Portal. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. The NBA playoffs are here, where every possession matters, every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. Here's what you should know. If you bet just $5 and it hits, you can gain $250 in bonus bets with that $5 winner. The app is also easy for you to go in, not only check out what the odds are, but you can get your stats, your trends, and look at the matchups for all kinds of different games and events. Plus, during the playoffs, any extra insight is going to be helpful. It only takes a little bit of time, and you can gain an edge for whatever it is you're trying to bet on. Playoff experience is also a little bit more fun if you know what's going on all the way down to the very nitty-gritty. Head over to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. All right, let's jump into the chat. My apologies for taking a while, but there are a lot of things in here. We'll have some fun with it. What's going on, Raymond? Hope all is well today, my friend. Appreciate you stopping in. Oh, Williams has family at Miami. If you're talking about Jatori, that would be interesting. He's a really good player, man. I saw him play last year. Raymond, these kids growing up in Alabama tend to grow up a little less fortunate and are more willing to take the biggest bag. A lot of them, that's true, and I don't blame them. If that's the case, you know what? More power to you. Raymond, and that wasn't meant to be a disparaging comment. Yeah, I get it. Now that's just reality. You're not saying anything mean. That's just true. DJ7, yes, Raymond. Power, absolutely. What's going on? Jamison Roberts should be a 4-star. Just saw the tape. Kid runs a 4.5. He's really good. That's from DK Harv. I've seen him play a couple times, and he's a great kid too. A little surprised he had, I forget what it was, 50 touchdowns or something like that. I can't remember. But he was a monster for Saraland last year on the ground and as a passer. Really good player. Yes, he can swing it. Absolutely. Hurricane Hicks, NIL can change family trajectories. Potentially, if they use it properly, absolutely. That's the whole intent. So nothing wrong with that. Raymond, it can. It can also be short-term gain over long-term success. That's another one of the political things. Which school are you going to? Development, better coach here, better degree. There's all kinds of ways to look at it. Hurricane, yes, it absolutely can be. Just be competitive on NIL. Yeah, like I'll give you an example. I go into the specifics of all the players per se, but there are a lot of guys that, quite frankly, aren't getting the same offer from school 2 that school 1 is. And matter of fact, I'll pull it up just to give you more insight. I didn't know if I wanted to talk about this or not. Let me see if I can find this. Number 3 here on the screen for those of you that are watching live, and I'll read it off for those of you who are listening later on. Jabarrius Garror, we call him Chicken. That's been his nickname forever. He's a defensive end at Viger. Miami and A&M are the likely teams that are leading. It's NIL. One-time Alabama commit. Alabama's NIL offer wasn't in the same stratosphere as A&M's. They're out. It's that simple. And he wants to go to Bama. He's an Alabama family. But That's part of it. On the other hand, there's another kid from Cairo, Georgia named Stephen Thornton that Bama just took. Far less cash they're going to have to pay for him, and he's not anywhere near as good as Garror is right now, but they think they can develop him. So is that a bad thing? I don't think so. But at the same time, that's very risky. Again, that's one of those programs that really matter. That's one of those programs where it makes a big difference long-term to the perception of your program. But nonetheless, that kid that they're taking is like 6'5", 6'6", 200 pounds, give or take. And he's going to need a couple of years. Garror is probably going to play early where he goes. He was State of Alabama's Defensive Player of the Year as a sophomore. He's really, really good. Let's see. Raymond. Well, Oregon needs to break through eventually and win one eventually. That can hurt. Oregon's considered to be a top 10 program, though, and the kids love the uniforms and all the splash. They're the most talked about program in college football when I go around the camps and stuff, in terms of everybody at least considering Oregon. Number one, every kid at least has an interest in Oregon. It's insane. Raymond, Golich just needs to show some improvement in wins and losses. Auburn can get going again. I agree. This is an important year. By the way, just throwing this out, I know this isn't about schedule today. Game 3, I believe it is. Auburn's first Southeastern Conference game of the season's in Jordan-Hare, and they host Florida. Why is that significant? Number one, they don't normally play them, so that's a big deal. It's the Gators. That's also a big brand. But at one point, many thought Golich was going to be at Florida. And then now the head coach at Florida, that's John Sumrall. He was at Tulane. Most people thought he was going to Auburn, and they crossed. The first-year coaches at each institution will be going up against each other. There's that political perception battle again. If Florida comes in and whips Auburn, that could cause problems. Perception is reality, whether it's fair or not. Yes, that is true, Raymond. Auburn cannot keep having sub-500 seasons. That will not work. Hurricane Hicks, Golich just needs time to create relationships. This is their first year. They've only got 2 commitments. One's in-state. Bama's only got 4 commitments, 2 in-state. So it's the same kind of deal. They're being patient. Raymond Horton, Notre Dame has been taking advantage of the Carolina schools lately, mainly North Carolina. Yeah, that's one of those states that I'm surprised Bama and Auburn don't hit a little bit more too. Raymond, looks like Marcus Freeman is about to pull a couple more Florida kids in 2027. That wouldn't be surprising. Notre Dame recruits Florida pretty well. Hurricane Hicks, everyone is trying to recruit in North Carolina. Not everybody's successful, though. That state is loaded with talent. It really is. Let's see. Hurricane Hicks, Freeman can recruit on the moon and win. I don't know about the moon, but he might be the best recruit in the country, certainly in the conversation. Leon, Oregon and Miami recruiting hard in Alabama. Yes, absolutely. Remember, Cristobal was on the staff at Alabama as the O-line coach. He knows that state well. He's gotten some players out of Alabama, and he'll continue. Hurricane Hicks, Williams' cousin is Upshaw. Hopefully we can go 50-50 in the family. I didn't know that Upshaw was. That's surprising to me that I didn't know that. Jatorris, talk about a big body and a guy that can move. He is an athlete. Raymond, I remember those Cairo teams from the 1990s. Yeah, it's down there in southwestern part of the state, right across the Florida state line. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Kirby is from Bainbridge, if I remember right. Cairo is like the school, what's like right down the street from it. I think that's where it's from. Raymond, do you think it will help Notre Dame and Alabama with the upcoming Notre Dame versus Auburn home series starting in 27? Possibly. I hadn't thought about that. That's a really good question. I could see it being a factor. I don't know if it's going to be a prime one. That state, again, the state of Alabama, and I live here. I live in Gulf Shores. It's a neat place, and the people don't want to leave. I know I love living here. Most of the kids would still rather stay close to home, but it's just the individual kids. It depends, man. A lot of guys don't want to really jump on board and go away, but the ones that do, they're just determined to do it. It's either A or B. There's no in between. So I think more with Notre Dame recruiting in Alabama, it's just they got to get lucky. Some of the kids that they like are just open to leaving. Notre Dame's competitive with NIL in any state, but they haven't had much success in Alabama over the years, although Justin Tuck would like a word. Raymond Horton, let's see. Yes. Mario takes one P2 player. I'm not sure what that means. From Alabama. Golesh needs to win to get core players from Alabama. 1 to 2 players is what you mean. Okay. Yeah, he gets 1 or 2 a year. And like he gets 1 or 2 kids from Georgia a year. And he gets 15 kids from Florida. And then he cherry picks the rest, like, get a kid from New Jersey or California or Illinois, whatever. Miami's done a really, really good job of figuring out when it comes to all the different places that they can get recruits. And I think that kind of goes into the whole situation with people recruiting Alabama. Think about the schools that have signed somebody out of Alabama recently. Ohio State, Tennessee, of course, Georgia and Georgia Tech. That's self-explanatory. Even Florida State being down, they've gotten a few kids. Florida, they've beaten Alabama and Auburn straight up. Miami has. Definitely Oregon. Texas A&M is probably going to get at least 1 or 2 pretty much every year the way they're recruiting this area. I think they've done a great job. They've got some really good assistants, and they've got tremendous NIL backing. Texas did a little bit, especially when Sark first arrived in Austin. We'll see. Oklahoma, they're making inroads, especially in the Mobile area. That's a lot of different schools just trying to get like one guy. And that doesn't even count about some of the Midwest schools that are starting to at least entertain it. Penn State or Notre Dame or Michigan. There have been a lot of different schools that have either signed somebody or at least had a commitment from the state of Alabama in the last few years. So overall, I don't think the days of Alabama and Auburn going back to having 50 to 70% of their roster from like in-state, maybe the way it was 40 years ago, that's probably not going to happen. They're going to get the kids from Georgia and Alabama as they can. They'll be a little broader, especially Alabama because of their cachet. That's just the way I see it. You were correct about Kirby is what I meant. Oh, yeah, Kirby, he's from Bainbridge, if I remember right. And he didn't even expect to get the Georgia offer. Obviously, it worked out. He ended up being an all SEC guy. Loving Life in Alaska says, Oregon would like to thank the state of Alabama for its contributions to the Ducks. They're doing a good job. I can tell you that because, again, King Hall is a really good football player. Some think he's the best player in the state for this cycle. I don't know if that's the case because, it's another really good year in Alabama. I don't like to really rank 1 through 5 per se. Great kid. He's physically ready to go. I think he could play running back. I think he could play safety. I think he can play nickel. I think he can play corner. He is built like a Greek god. I get it if you want to take a kid like King Hall. He's really, really talented. So with that, I just want to mention a couple other things here while on the subject. We've got a lot of commitments coming across the screen over the next 4 to 5 days that are going to be really, really important. And I'm sure there will be other commitments later today and among others that are going to be important. Matter of fact, I just saw 2 commitments today. Antoine Higgins out of Anderson, pretty good linebacker, just committed to Kentucky. And John Gay, a safety out of Chaminade, just committed to Notre Dame. We're going to see a lot of these things pop up that I just popped that on my screen as we do this live. So we're going to have some different breaking news. Will Mensel's decision. We're also going to be talking about, matter of fact, I'll put this up on the screen right now since I still have it in my backdrop. This guy right here, Elijah Haven's decision is on the 25th. That's in 3 days. So that's on Saturday. He's the 6'5", 220-pound quarterback out of the state of Louisiana. He's not just good. Like, he had 62 passing touchdowns last year. It's incredible. Elijah Haven's probably going to Bama. There are going to be a lot of guys we're going to talk about right here on the Portal Podcast. So if you have questions about anybody in particular, fire away. I'm starting to wrap up the show here, but I'm happy to take questions about whatever you want to talk about. So this is an area. Raymond says, I hope Notre Dame and Oregon meet in the playoffs. That'd be a good game. Leon, Miami is trending for 2 of Alabama's best players. Mario has connections from his days at Bama. He absolutely does. Absolutely. Loving Life in Alaska. Now, if Oregon can crack into Georgia, we could really use KJ Green. He's a good player. Met him last summer. Good football player. Lives just outside Atlanta. He goes at Stevenson High School. Raymond Harton. Boom. Yep. They just got a commitment. Yeah, Notre Dame, again, for whatever it's worth. John Gay, 6'1", 185, probably plays safety, nickel, whatever. He plays at Chaminade Madonna. A lot of guys have come out of there. Au'Bailey, the quarterback at NC State. Of course, Jeremiah Smith, the chosen one at Ohio State, and players just all over the country. Chaminade Madonna is one of the best programs in the nation. Raymond, I had no idea. That's why I keep checking it. Like during the show, I'll check and see who's committed. I think it's a really good idea. Hurricane Hicks. Gamble is the one I'm curious about. I don't know when Zayden's making his announcement. I don't know if he's come to a conclusion. I think Notre Dame is the best bet, but I haven't heard anything on him. Let me see who else is committed today besides Antoine Higgins to Kentucky and John Gay to Notre Dame. Florida Atlantic got Aubrey Johnson, a receiver. He's out of North Shore in Houston. That's wild. Maryland gets Davion Vanderbilt, a wide receiver out of Channel View. That's another Houston area school. If I remember right, isn't Jalen Hurts from Channel View? I think that's where he's from. The kid played at Bama and now, of course, is with the Eagles. Keaton Wolin at Amory High School in Wisconsin, a linebacker, going to Iowa State. UCLA yesterday picked up Khalil Terry, a former Notre Dame commit. He flips over to UCLA in the Bruins. Benjamin Wother, Centennial High School in Peoria, Arizona, offensive tackle, huge guy, 6'7", 335, going to play for the Stanford Cardinal. Florida Atlantic gets Fort Bend, Ridge Point quarterback. Getting quarterbacks out of Houston, that's so weird for Florida Atlantic. That's Missouri City on the southwest side of Houston. He's headed to Florida Atlantic. Karsten Campbell out of Garces Memorial in Bakersfield, California. Lineman's going to Fresno State. Pittsburgh got Walter Hudson out of Roman Catholic. It used to be a basketball school. In Philadelphia, he's a linebacker going to play for the Pitt Panthers. Ole Miss got Cordero McDaniel here in the last couple of days, 6'7", 310, big offensive lineman out of Brookhaven, Mississippi. LSU got Braylon Calais out of Cecilia and Karen Crow, Louisiana. That's just outside Lafayette. Really good program. That's a really interesting situation because I was wondering if Lane was going to start hitting some of the in-state guys. LSU picked up a big one there. Who else we got? What do you think about him, Brian? I have to study Gay's film. I haven't really watched it. I really don't know. Let's see. Mons I can talk about here in a second. He's a kid I've seen a few times. Love Florida Atlantic's campus. Used to live in Fort Lauderdale, says Raymond Horton. Florida Atlantic's campus is insane. It is beautiful. Champ Mons, powerful player, strong. He's got like 4 relatives that have played in the NFL, like his grandfather, cousins, etc. And his dad, if I remember correctly, was a big-time minor league baseball player. Didn't make it to the bigs, but he was like the Eastern League All-Star Game MVP or something like that. Like, he was a guy. So his family is insanely athletic. And when I saw him as a freshman, I thought he was like a senior. He looked like he was an outside linebacker getting ready to go to play at Florida. He was a freshman quarterback. So wonderful. Champ Mons is not your normal prospect. He's at Vero Beach. This will be his last year. He's reclassed. I think he's got a world of potential. He just needs to clean up technique like any other young kid. But Mons is really, really talented. I think he'll end up being a big-time player wherever he ends up. He's a great kid, too. So very competitive. I'm curious to see how he goes down the road in terms of his ability to not just learn physically, but it's about the mental maturity and understanding reads, being able to adapt after a bad play. How do you not only handle yourself, but other players around you? All that leadership stuff that comes with quarterback. That'll be the one big thing that I think everybody at quarterback has to do always. Leadership. Got to be careful, your body language and everything else. So he's the kind of kid, though, I think that'll do it. He's very positive. I like him a lot. Let's see here. Raymond, my in-laws live in Sebastian. Not that far from there. Wouldn't surprise me. Legacy recruit. Raymond. There you go. Yeah, fingers crossed. All right, I'm going to wrap it up there. I appreciate everybody stopping in today, having some fun, talking about the state of Alabama. I don't know what I'll talk about tomorrow. I'm even thinking about doing 2 podcasts tomorrow. Yeah, we got big commitments. Probably talk about Will Menzel at some point tomorrow. Might start doing some of these at night. Probably more people are going to come on. I love doing it at noon, but there are more people available at night. That's probably going to be the long-term plan for this show. So Personally, I got my hopes up for more Dakota Garror. That kid's out of the Detroit area. He's a great player, but I don't know what his situation is. I haven't heard anything about that, so we'll see. Raymond, I'll see you tomorrow. I appreciate it, brother. DJ, you're welcome, sir. Appreciate it. Raymond, I will see you as well. Thank you to everybody that tuned in to the Portal Podcast today to learn a little bit about what's going on in Alabama, recruiting across the country. It's a lot of fun. Let's talk about it each and every day right here on the Portal Podcast. Please like and subscribe. Give us a 5-star review on Apple. This has been the Portal Podcast.